Only way that this American government is to effectively work is if we get enough progressives to, through the years, maybe not right now, but through the years, get rid of corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. Ever since 1972, the Democrats, when they lost to, in the presidency, when they lost to a second term of Richard Nixon, that they decided to kind of work with the Republicans to be just as conservative as the Republicans, because they wanted to win another presidency. They were pretty angry that Richard Nixon got a second term, and I think it was McCarthy or whatever his name was. Excuse my bad, I don't remember the person that ran against Nixon in the second term. McCarthy or something like that. He's an Irish American politician in the 70s, and my bad if I can't remember his name. And the Democrats wanted to compete with the Republicans, and I think I've said this before, by being as conservative as the Republicans. So when Jimmy Carter got into office, a Democrat from Georgia, he was the first Democrat to cut welfare programs for the poor. He was the first Democrat. Again, in the 1970s, Jimmy Carter was the first Democrat to cut welfare for the poor. Because the new veneer of the Democrats being conservative and competing with the Republicans have pretty much begun in the 70s, the 1970s. So all the programs that FDR put together in the 30s and 40s were gradually either ending or that Democrats were not proposing. When Reagan got into office, from 1981 to 1989, he was a real Republican. He was an extreme right-wing Republican, and he married Wall Street with politicians. And now Wall Street, the Koch brothers, are, as an example, are telling Democrats and Republicans what to do. Now, majority of the older Democrats and the older Republicans are kissing the ass of Wall Street. And if you ever seen the movie Oliver Stone's Wall Street, see it. It's a really good movie. The first Wall Street that came out in, I guess, 1986 or 87. It's a really good movie, and Oliver Stone is a very good filmmaker. And Oliver Stone also did a documentary about the United States, which is a really good documentary. It's pretty long, but it's a really good one. It goes all the way up to Obama as president, and it really says a lot. It it really boggles your mind. And when Bill Clinton became president and wanted to get a second term, they were still vestiges of the Reagan Republicans in Washington, D.C. And Bill Clinton wanted to get a second term, and he wanted to. I think the Democrats were kind of ending the New Deal programs that FDR gradually ending the New Deal programs that FDR put together in the 30s. Social Security and Medicare and welfare for the poor, but giving corporate money to the rich, which Donald Trump has benefited and his family has benefited. Donald Trump's father and Donald Trump himself and his family have benefited from getting government money, getting federal funds from the American government. Our money, our tax dollars. Donald Trump has getting money from the government. So ever since the 80s, Wall Street has been playing footsie under the table with politicians and been buying out politicians and to doing their bidding. And it's usually to give money to under the table to billion-dollar corporations and moving billion-dollar corporations to other countries like Africa and India and South America. And when the Trump turds complain about where's the jobs at, well, why don't you talk to these conservative politicians in Wall Street that you love so much that pretty much condone moving corporations to other countries. So Bill Clinton put together a radical conservative crime bill, and majority of African Americans ended up in prison rather than put together housing and put together better jobs for African Americans and people of color, poor people. And, Bill Clinton got a second term. He got a second term because the vestiges of the Reagan Revolution was still in Washington, D.C., and that the House and the Senate were majority Republican. And again, Clinton knew where his butter, his bread was buttered. And both Clinton and Obama are a lot more conservative than they want to admit. They are a lot more conservative. They talk all this liberal rigmarole, but they're not liberals. They're corporatist Republicans, and they're Democrat in name only. And so when Obama got into office, and like I said early this morning, Obama acted like he was a progressive Democrat. Once he got into office, he kind of maintained the legislation that was set with the Reagan administration and G.W. Bush, who was a big fan of Ronald Reagan. And, again, G.W. Bush put together 2 wars in his term that sucked up a lot of money. And he also, we had the worst recession in 70 years. So it's very, you as a president and as a politician, majority of them are corporatists, and they're very limited of helping working families and people who need help, because since the 1980s, they have always been told what to do by Wall Street, heads of Wall Street, and have been giving money under the table by heads of Wall Street. And so, politicians don't make that much money. They don't make that much money. And so they have to get money somehow, some way. And these corporate people, unless you're FDR or Theodore Roosevelt or the Roosevelt family, or unless you're the Kennedy family, majority of the presidents were very lower middle class people. They needed money to run for office. Especially these days, it costs a lot of money to run for office. When Obama was running against Romney, it was the most expensive election in American history. Romney is a very rich man, and Obama was getting money from many corporations. And yeah, Obama had to pay back. There were a lot of legislation that Obama cheated, the Obama were legislation that I admired that were against corporations, but at the same time, corporations in Obama's second term still gave him money. They still gave Obama money, even though Obama cheated them by putting together legislation that was anti-corporate. So what the future should be is that we should have as many progressives in office, left-wing progressives, that can get rid of the corporate Wall Street. It's going to be difficult to do, but as long as we have Wall Street controlling things, poor people will always be poor. Good jobs will be obsolete, and they will be sucking up the tit of billions of dollars. Banks and corporate farmers will always be the first group of people that get money from the government. And working families will always be the last people that get money that they need. It's taken forever to get this stimulus package together because the Democrats and Republicans, who are pretty much the same kind of people, they're just bitching about where the stimulus should go to. The first stimulus was mainly given to corporate people who are billionaires, and what was left, the boogers and the and the fingertips were giving to working families, and that's what a stimulus program should be about, was to give money to working families that needed it during a pandemic. So the future of America is in big trouble because we'll always, politicians and presidents in the future will always be a slave to Wall Street. Wall Street will always tell politicians what to do, no matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And I think that the American people need to be concerned about that, and I think they need to vote. And I think they need to put the Biden and Harris administration, who might put together a couple progressive laws and just to give us a bone to chew on. But it's going to take many years to get rid of corporations and to get rid of Wall Street that has a big influence on American politicians. And it's the truth. It's the truth. I'm not playing games. I'm not lying to you. Wall Street plays a big part on American politicians and what they do, and what they do to working people and families. Is whatever Wall Street wants, Wall Street gets. And it's been that way since the 1980s. And maybe that's why we don't have an FDR or a JFK or LBJ, because people are making quick money off of the government. Billionaires are making quick money. Yahoo, Amazon.com, a $1 trillion corporation, did not pay their taxes last year, and they're not going to pay their taxes this year. And it's the people that suffer. So I think people need to be politically active and need to care and need to vote, and maybe the future politicians would try to get rid of Wall Street. So vote and love one another, and I'll see you when I see you.